Okay, I'd like to call the meeting to order. If we could all please stand for a pledge of allegiance. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Hey, welcome to tonight's Lower Macungie Township Board of Commissioners workshop. We're going to start off here with item number 2, presentation of Eagle Scout project by Liam Hughes. Liam, come on up. You can either stand, you can sit. We just ask you to speak into the microphone.
Okay, hello everybody. My name is Liam Hughes. I'm from Boy Scout Troop 80. And I previously had visited here a few weeks ago to get approval of my Eagle Scout project, and it was approved. So now I come here just to let you guys know about it, and just so you guys know what's going on. So for a little background information, I've lived in Lower Macungie my whole life, and I'm currently enrolled in Emmaus High School. I've served in Boy Scouts for the past 6 years, and I'm eager to complete my scouting journey by earning my Eagle. This requires me to complete a project that benefits my community called an Eagle Scout project. At first, I was struggling to come up with a project. Luckily, I was approached by my neighborhood with the idea of creating a communications board for the neighborhood as my Eagle Scout project. After thinking about the offer for a while, I finally accepted it with the plan of building a lending library along with the communications board. I felt that this would be a good project because it directly benefits the community of Hidden Valley in many ways. The communications board would not only serve as a way for the HOA to post about upcoming events, but also a way that the community can stay informed and bring us closer together. So in my previous meeting, I was met with a couple of questions and suggestions, such as making it wheelchair accessible, and also making sure that before we dug anything that we knew that there were no like power lines there. So I've taken those into account, and yeah, so that's basically just what I'm doing.
Super, thank you. Yes, we've seen all of the exhibits that you brought to the Recreation Committee, and they're extensive. I'll open it up to any commissioners have questions for Liam. Okay.
Just a comment.
Yep.
I think it's great that you put this as far as digging the power lines underground. That PA1 make that just for the protection of people. When you put that spade in the ground shovel, but it was great. Thank you.
Yeah, we have a long history of Eagle Scout projects, and they've all done a great job to help the community. The only thing I noted, and I already spoke to our manager, Mr. Beitel, is when it comes to the coloring, it mentions in there about trying to keep it in line with the signs for the park. They are probably changing in the not too distant future. So just work closely with Stan or whoever on staff is guiding you on the coloring part of it. This way we don't have to change it, if we do change the signs, which I hope we do, because I don't like ours.
Yeah.
All right. Any other questions? Bruce, you have any questions?
I would just note, as Liam said, this did come before the Parks and Rec, and that was found to be favorable, and they recommended that the project move forward. So it has been endorsed by that group as well.
Yeah, the only thing I'll ask is that, when you're done, come back and see us again and let us know how everything went. Okay? All right, Liam, thanks a lot. You're off the hot seat now.
Thank you.
You can breathe. Okay, moving on. Interviews for Planning Commission applicants. Up first, Mr. Ozias Moore. Or should I say doctor? Or is it doctor? Yeah, come on up.
Good evening.
Good evening. Have a seat.
Yes, that's fine.
Super. Welcome.
Thank you.
If you could pull the mic a little closer.
Yeah, just pull the mic a little bit closer. So the questioning will be led by our planning commission. By Mr. Jones, Nathan Jones, who is our director of planning and community development. Once he is finished, if any of the commissioners or Mr. Bio, who is our planning committee president, I guess, president, right? Chairman, I gave you a raise. That's cool. Just answer them to the best of your ability and we'll take it from there.
Sounds great.
Okay,
Thank you.
super. So Mr. Jones.
Sure. So first off, thank you so much for your interest in the Planning Commission. Very excited. Your credentials are amazing. And we're very excited that you have the interest. I guess the first question I have is, do you understand the purpose and the function of a planning commission and what it does for a township? Have you ever taken part in, or have you ever maybe like volunteered or seen any other, attended a public meeting, anything like that?
So first, thank you, and I'm delighted to be here. I view the Planning Commission, we know it's appointed by the Board of Commissions, and we serve at the discretion of the board. We serve in an advisory role around land use and development, using the trifecta of the comprehensive plan, the zoning ordinances, and the subdivision and land use ordinances, in addition to other plans such as smart growth, et cetera. So it's the adherence to the legal documents around the zoning ordinance and these recommendations and frameworks that are important for enhancing the quality as well as the economic viability for our community for current and future growth. I think my background aligns with this interest because I love data. I'm a student of learning and continuous learning. Before I joined, I was recently appointed to the Board of Directors of the Chamber of Commerce in East Penn. Prior to that, I was on the Board of Directors for the Allentown Business Alliance. And I view that as a kind of a light version of this, where we're meeting with the business owners, we're taking into consideration aspects of impact to the community around planning of programs and ensuring that there is a kind of economic focus and viability on bringing businesses back into the area. And there is a plan. And in the meetings, we would have the chief of police, we would have present also PennDOT and other members that would provide perspective on issues of the key considerations around these nuances of traffic and pollution, et cetera. So I think that provided an interest and appetite for that particular area. I also think my background as a faculty member that is coming in the area, and I'm meeting with other faculty members who are making decisions and hearing whether or not their families are moving to Lower Macungie or not, right? So it gives me also insight in addition to my involvement in the East Penn Chamber to be kind of aware of what's happening and understanding. And obviously as a homeowner in the Lower Macungie Township, I have a passion for the quality and viability and growth and sustainability of our township. So I think being that I view myself as a student and I love to learn, I love data and analytics. I understand in my roles in corporate America and currently as a professor, the importance of neutrality, the importance of ethics, the importance of being well-studied, and bringing recommendations to the Board of Commissioners based upon the proposals that are provided and making suggestions and recommendations, asking great questions, maybe considering other data points or information that would be useful to have as part of the consideration, right? And I think it's that fresh perspective that I bring. And also, most importantly, the fact that I love working collaboratively. And I view that I'm a person that has a history of being someone that's fun to work with, right? Prior to academia, for those that know about my background, I think when you're doing these interviews, you're getting a sense of how well vetted people are. I worked across 4 top Fortune 500 industries at Westinghouse Electric Corporation. After that, I worked at IBM, American Express, and then my last executive role was at Pfizer Pharmaceuticals before moving into academia and getting my PhD at Cornell. So in all of these roles, I've been fortunate and blessed to never be fired, to always be promoted in my roles in these organizations. I have a master's from Penn in engineering, and I think it's very important in this role as a skill set to bring that attention to detail and that passion and excitement and fresh perspective. In this room, there's a wealth of knowledge. Ron, I believe you were on the steering committee for the development of the comprehensive plan. There's a wealth of knowledge about the history and culture of the community and township. And so I think it's that blend of the nuances and insight that we all bring to our analysis of these proposals, and to provide that insight and advice to the Board of Commissioners, and to make recommendations that are taken into consideration these important factors for our township. And the other part of your question, I have not had an opportunity to attend a Board of Commissioner or planning meeting. However, I have viewed on the Lower Macungie Facebook, not Facebook, the YouTube page, the video. I also have read the agenda minutes and the comprehensive plan, the smart growth plan, and many other documents that are listed and publicly available on the website to get a sense of the structure and cadence of the process, what's provided from the township, and kind of a sense of how things work within the organization. I am, again, a student. I'm a quick learner, and so I think I'm able to hit the ground running with this set of skills, but also I view myself as an apprentice, and I view everyone in here as an expert and has a wealth of knowledge that I hope to also learn from, as well as provide my own value add and contribution.
So I'm basically going to skip a whole bunch of my other questions now.
I was just checking those off, Nate.
Yeah, I mean,
Got that.
check.
Check.
Are you available for Tuesdays a month for meetings?
Yes.
Okay.
Yes. And I love the concept of the workshop, an opportunity to really study the proposals, do the work that's necessary, obviously, to provide the best advice to the Board of Commissioners in the role that we serve at their discretion.
Great. The only other question I have is always my favorite to ask, which is, so what's your vision for the township? If you could look ahead in 5, 10, 20 years, what would you see future Lower Macungie Township looking like in years ahead?
I think it's a combination. I would start with kind of the foundation, right? I think it's a focus to maintain and enhance infrastructure services, right? So it's kind of like the Maslow pyramid. You have to get right kind of your sewage, your air, your water, your transportation, your roadways, maintaining those, but also enhancing those, right? Those in many ways are signals for residents as well as businesses for their decisions in coming to the community. I also think we want to be the leader around sustainability and ensuring that our land use and development adheres to environmental sound practices, right? And I do also appreciate a lot of the ideas in the smart growth plan. There are ways in which to be responsible with our footprint and thinking of ways to be mindful of, for example, using natural vegetation or natural use of landscaping to support sediment drainage and runoff. I also think it's important to be mindful of our culture and our heritage and what we are kind of embody as being a part of Lower Macungie Township. So I think it's the harmony of maintaining and preserving the culture of what makes Lower Macungie, but also being able to grow in a way that allows us to bring businesses and a variety of different businesses to really bring the economic growth to our area, as well as being mindful of the needs when families and other members are considering townships to choose from, right? In Southern Lehigh, we are competing against other municipalities, right? In the comprehensive plan, we know it's 6 municipalities that are there, right? So it's important, I think, to be mindful that we're in a shared, embedded part of Lehigh Valley. And I would want Lower Macungie to not lag in our ability to showcase the fact that we are making sound decisions around land use and development. I would also love to be able to see more community engagement and more community awareness and understanding of the land use and development process, right? Because I think that helps to attenuate concerns, assuage some of the things that people may be thinking we're not considering. So I would think, given usage of social media now, where we're able to live stream the meetings and have ways in which maybe people are participating virtually, but maybe other ways, I think that we're able to engage the community in more meaningful ways that help us to grow in a way that bolsters the quality of life in the community. When we think about quality, it could be health outcomes. Quality can be around economic outcomes. So I think it's being mindful of those types of considerations that I think are very important, that I think Ron, when you were doing the steering committee for the comprehensive plan, what I like about the planning process is not a fixed process. We're always constantly, in a very dynamic way, thinking about what's happening today and how that impacts long-term consideration, right? So even though the comprehensive plan was written, it has the date of 2017, I believe, on the cover, October 2017, but the planning process is not stagnant. It's a very dynamic, adjustable process. We take into consideration these aspects that are changing in a way that always is mindful of what's going to be happening 5 years, 10 years down the road, 20 years down the road.
Great. Thank you very much. I have no further questions.
Okay. Mr. Bile, any questions from you?
Maybe just one question. I noticed in your application, you indicate that you lived in a downtown setting and now you live in a more suburban setting. From a land use and planning perspective, what's your takeaway from those two? I guess they're very different experiences.
I would say that when you think of the comprehensive plan or the vision around downtown Allentown, I lived in downtown Allentown for the time when I first moved to Lehigh Valley. I was coming from Ithaca. And there was a focus on how to grow the footprint in a way that dealt with some safety considerations and bringing people back into downtown, and sustaining businesses downtown, right? In that particular Hamilton district zone, that was kind of the economic zone. So it was a very focused kind of block area that seemed to be a lot of the focus around the development there. I find that there is a resurgence of cities and movements back into more dense spaces that's occurring not just in downtown Allentown, but in other spaces. As a side note, I always love giving people the Jeopardy question, which is, most people don't realize that Allentown is the third largest city in the state of Pennsylvania, right? Philadelphia, Pittsburgh, and clearly Lower Macungie is a suburb of downtown, of Allentown. So I think the differences would be, there's a different footprint when it comes to LAMDA, access to transportation in the suburbs, right? There's a different type of access to roads that are different in the suburbs, let's say, than they would be in downtown Allentown. But very common considerations are around how can we grow the quality of life for residents? How can we enhance the quality of life for residents? And also, how can we bring businesses to the area in a way that kind of blends in a harmonious way with the environment that people are thinking about in that space. I also think what's interesting in coming from and living in different spaces, you come with a fresh perspective to kind of see how people talk about neighborhoods or talk about considerations when they're choosing places to live in different areas. But I see some commonalities and some unique, distinct differences in these spaces. But I think we're embedded in this larger ecosystem, of the Lehigh Valley. So I think that there probably are some ways that we can learn from each other and partner in ways. I know in the Smart Growth Plan, the water usage plan is a plan that connects the broader municipalities here with the city of Allentown, right? So there are some connections, I think, from planning and land use that connect our considerations to Allentown, even though we're the suburb of Allentown. So I think there are a lot of commonalities, and there obviously are some unique distinctions in each of those areas. Does that answer your question?
It does. Thank you.
Sure.
Okay, any commissioner questions? Commissioner Robert?
Okay, just my understanding is you are on the Parks and Rec Advisory Committee at this point. And the township is going along the lines of having one person on one committee. And so my question is, would you prefer to be on the Planning Commission or the Parks and Rec Commission?
My preference would be to be on the planning commission.
Okay, so if you were appointed, you would be willing to resign from Parks and Rec Commission?
Yes.
Okay, thank you.
Any other commissioner? Okay. Then you are all set. So
Thank
thank you
you.
very much.
Thank you for your time.
All right, have a
Thank
great
you.
night. Yeah. Felt inadequate. as I was reading. Mr. Michael Siegel. Welcome.
Thank you.
So just for clarification, Mr. Jones will lead the questioning tonight for the interview for the Planning Commission, followed by Mr. Bile, the chairperson of our Planning Commission, and then any commissioner questions that we have. Okay?
Sure.
Very good. Mr. Jones.
Mr. Siegel, how are you doing?
Right.
So for those of us here in the room, many of us know Mike, and a lot of the time that he has helped assist and joined us at planning commission meetings, asking some very good questions that get factored into the process. I think for the benefit of those who aren't familiar with you, we should just go over a couple of the standardized questions. We all know that you have an extensive background with planning. So knowing that you are all set in terms of, we know that you've attended planning commission meetings and whatnot, I think it'd be a good thing to start off with perhaps introducing yourself and telling us why you think you'd be a good planning commissioner candidate. Any unique training and skills and background that you have that would bring you as an asset to the board.
Thank you. My name's Mike Siegel. I'm currently been a resident of Lower McCountry Township for approximately 30 years. During my tenure here, I've served on the zoning hearing board as an alternate member. I've served as a vice chairman for the Environmental Advisory Council. And I did a short stint on the planning commission back in early 2000. And I had to leave because of personal reasons. Currently, my background is you've read my resume. I have a Bachelor of Science degree in geography, a minor in geology. I have 24 plus hours in postgraduate work. I have many certifications for environmental science, environmental hydrology, geology. I have a minor in geology in there. I've served on several other boards throughout Lehigh County. I've been on the Act 167 board for Little Lehigh Creek, Copley Creek. I've been the zoning officer for North Whitehall Township. I've been the zoning officer for and planning administrator for Lower Nazareth Township. I've been the zoning and planning administrator for Lower Mount Bethel Township, and served as a interim township manager for that township. My last years of service was to Lower Providence Township in Montgomery County. I served as Director of Community Development and for 6 years. I've served on the governor's response team back in the 1990s when Nestle came in. I've worked for the Lehigh County Conservation District for 6 years as a resource conservationist. And on my off-duty times, so when I'm now currently retired, and I spend a lot of time educating rural municipalities on smart growth and zoning and environmental issues concerning warehouse proliferation throughout the Lehigh Valley.
Thank you so much. I would presume you'll be okay potentially attending 2 planning commission meetings a month?
Yes, I am now retired, and I do now have the time to attend those meetings. And should the planning commission appoint me as a liaison for the planning commission to the environmental advisory council, I could serve 3 meetings.
Are you employed, associated with, a member of, or do you belong to any other business, company, association, group, or organization that regularly appears before the township or may appear before the township with formal business?
No.
Okay. Then, as I noted with our last applicant, tends to be my favorite question to ask. What's your vision of the township for the next, say, 5, 10, 20 years? What do you think Lower Macungie is going to look like in the future?
I would like to see Lower Macungie Township follow its comprehensive and greener growth plans that I assisted on over the last 15, 20 years. My offering as a public constituent, as well as serving on the Environmental Advisory Council, I'd like to see smart growth initiatives really push because I think that's the future of this township. I see that the most regional development issues along I-78 and Hamilton Boulevard become very critical. And I see those issues being pushed forward because that is the gateway of our township. You have essentially 2 gateways to this township. You have Hamilton 78 and you have the Spring Creek Route 100 gateways. And I like to see those made into something that every municipality around here would be, envy of. So.
Great. And actually, just one more. So obviously, like a lot of other communities, we've experienced a very big boom over the last couple of years post-COVID in terms of development proposals for the township. As far as current development going on, what are your thoughts around what is going on in the Lehigh Valley as a whole or our township? What do you like? What do you don't like? What would you like to do to make an impact on growth in the valley and in Lower Macungie?
That's probably the best question I like to answer because that's what I've been doing the last 5, 6 years since I left the Environmental Advisory Council. I spend a lot of my time educating other municipalities throughout Lehigh Valley on warehouse proliferation. It has been the #1 issue throughout the valley as far as growth problems and traffic problems and environmental problems. And I've been working with other planning commissions and other municipal officials and trying to educate them on the importance of following their comprehensive plans and developing ordinances to control and not restrict those uses. In fact, I constantly use Lower Macungie's warehouse ordinance as a guide for other rural municipalities and all the good things that this township has done over the last 5, 10 years for following the multiple regional Southwestern comp plan in order to follow that and control those uses so we have a nice township and preserve farmland.
Thanks. No further questions.
Okay, Mr. Jones.
Just one question, Mike. I know you have an opportunity to attend many planning commission meetings over the years. What do you think the planning commission is doing right, and what can the planning commission do better?
I think the weakness right now in the planning commission is having more strength in stormwater ordinances. I think there's things that need to be done that can make it stricter because as we run out of available farmland to develop, stormwater becomes more of an issue as far as water quality goes and what goes into the Little Lehigh. I think that's a tough issue to address because there's so many different techniques out there to control stormwater, and the planning commission sits at the head of that table guiding this board of supervisors as well as educating the public on the importance of stormwater. The second thing I would probably concentrate on as a planning commission is instituting smart growth techniques that are out of the box. Think about things that other municipalities have done in southeast Pennsylvania and that have worked well in their situations where you've come to the point in your stage of your township where all the available land is now coming to a close. And now you have to start looking at filling in the what I call the blanks in the township. That's areas that haven't, that it's not quite great for the land developer to develop, but he still wants to develop it and thinking of ways to develop it that still meets the goals of the township.
Thank you, Mike.
Commissioners, any commissioner questions? Okay, Mike, that's it. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
All right, have a great night. Okay, moving on. Item number 4, review resolution and plan for McCungy Crossings Condo Unit 2. Mr. Jones.
Yes, sir. So McCungy Crossings Condo Unit 2 is a commercial retail service center that has more or less been on the radar since the Home Depot was originally approved years ago. As the Home Depot received its approval, the applicants, Mr. Newton and the applicant's representation came before us to note that they were getting ready to prepare for this proposal as well. So it's actually a very good segue from some of the discussions that we've had with the potential planning commission applicants, because we wanted to ensure that whatever was built here in the way of the commercial center adhered to our Hamilton Boulevard corridor and smart growth plan. So the project is proposed on existing parking. So from a stormwater perspective, it falls under the NPDS. This came in as a modification of approved plan. The trips are already accounted for in the HOP for the site. So really, all we needed to do at the staff and planning commission level was look at the plan to be recorded and a couple of the planning issues. And we spent a fair amount of time working with the applicant to get the building as close to Hamilton Boulevard as possible. With the recognition that there could potentially be a food user in there. We wanted to ensure that there was outdoor dining, which will now be visible from the entrance point. We spent a lot of time talking about how the building would look from Hamilton, since the technical rear of the building faces up against Hamilton, whereas the front would be in the parking area. We worked with the applicant to actually get a facade that basically acts as double frontage. So it looks like a storefront out on Hamilton Boulevard. It's connected in from the not from the residential, I'm sorry, from the pedestrian aspect of the rest of the units there. It is walkable from the Home Depot site itself, which is further to the right there. And Renee, if you could show the landscaping plan real quick. We ensured that there's plenty of greenery on the site. We are going to work with the applicant to potentially remove some of the vegetation prior to plan recording to make sure that it's fully visible from Hamilton Boulevard, because it is a very handsome structure. But again, you're going to have that outdoor dining patio component. The applicant said that there could be several users in there or just a few, depending on who comes in. But we're hoping that that we get a couple of users, especially a food user with that patio now. And we went through about, I want to say, 3 or 4 iterations of architectural renderings. This is the final version. As you can see, the second down there, well, that looks like the front. That's actually going to be the rear of the structure. So it's going to look like a storefront from Hamilton Boulevard. Those are the business end / emergency exits. There's going to be faux windows. There will be awnings and signage. So you will have that look essentially of a storefront onto the boulevard. And then 2 more down, you can see that that's the actual frontage of the site where patrons would come in from the parking lot. We do have a side view. And the side view actually, I think, yep, there you go, is up on top. There's an entrance exit for a potential food user. And then again, there will be that patio with the fencing around it with the retaining wall and plenty of landscaping there for the outdoor dining component. So quite frankly, we're at this point, we couldn't be happier with how everything has turned out. We think this is going to be a good asset for the site between the Home Depot and the the unit here, and all future development that will likely come in at some point in time there has a really good starting point with those two structures. So I will hand it over to Brian to bring up any engineering items. I hope I didn't steal his thunder about the traffic and stormwater, but again, this one was relatively easy for us.
Thank you, Nate. Yeah, as Nate had referenced, this project, majority of the issues with this project were accounted for with the overall Home Depot project, including stormwater management, traffic, sanitary water, sewer service. So essentially, our reviews were focused on changes to the storm sewer system, the layout of the actual parking and shopping center, and landscaping. And the applicant at this point has satisfactorily addressed all of our primary concerns. So,
Any comments from the applicant?
One thing, Brian, I'd like to point out, because this is what an item Maury brought up on the Home Depot. If you see on the very front of the parking field, there's 6 EV charging stations that are going in as part of this project. We've had several meetings with EV Go, they're a supplier of the charging stations. They're moving along. I think they have their permit in with the township right now for the installation of those EV charging stations.
Okay. Is this, just for my edification, is this to the eastern side of the western entrance to the property?
This is the eastern side of the main traffic signal entrance, yes.
Okay. Right.
And this is owned by the building will be owned by the owner of the shopping center, which is
Okay.
the same owner that has the shopping center next to our office with the Walgreens, the Chick-fil-A. The parent company's RD Management Company.
So Home Depot's to the right of this?
Yes,
Right? Okay.
yes.
Are there any commissioner comments or questions? Okay. Thank you very much. Okay, moving on. Item number 5, review rezoning request for 4950 Liberty Lane. Mr. Jones.
Yes, sir. So the applicants had reached out to the planning commission some time ago. They own this parking lot here on Liberty Lane, which is essentially sandwiched in between the West Coastville Post Office and the townhome community that loops through Liberty Lane there. The applicants came before the planning commission, noted that they would like to make use of this lot, that they were having concerns about people parking on it or that there was storage going on there. Their long-term plan for this was to put in several banks of townhomes and then a maintenance garage with a residential unit above it, actually for the owner. The maintenance garage would manage not just the property that's owned along Liberty Lane, but also the businesses across the street in the office buildings. So it would essentially be a multi-use structure there. They noted to us that they felt that the townhomes as proposed were in line with the existing neighborhood. And that really at the end of the day, one of the major goals was getting that maintenance structure in. So for this empty pad, this is what they've more or less proposed in concept. The problem is it's suburban zoned. So they noted to us that under the zoning, they would need a use variance. We noted to them that they may wish to consider a change of the zoning ordinance or rather the map. They've proposed this map, as you see here, which basically connects the U urban district from the other side of the Northeast Extension into that neighborhood with the townhomes, and then includes that lot. And they felt that it was a transitional zone. So it's a little bit of a stretch to pull it across the highway there. But you can see that there's a similar land use pattern. The planning commission recommended this zone change to you all 3-2, and after a lot of discussion. So it was a very, very close discussion. There were concerns about traffic along Brookside Road. There were concerns, I guess, from neighbors in the abutting single-family residential area there, and asking why they couldn't be singles instead of towns. And then there was concerns about in that residential area in particular, increasing the density in that particular area as opposed to other areas where we already have that called out for in our ordinance, i.e. other urban zones and areas along Hamilton Boulevard. So it was a pretty long discussion. Again, at the end, it was a 3-2 vote in favor. The applicant did request that we bring it to the board after the planning commission gave a positive recommendation. It's before you tonight. But again, this is one of those smaller lots that I believe Mr. Siegel brought up about, you know, someone wants to do something with it. What can they do? And, you know, we would have to make a pretty significant change to our zoning map to accommodate this one property. So it would be a pretty big change for a small lot on this end. So that's the long and short of it. I'm happy to answer any questions that you might have. We just didn't want them to wait much longer. They had been waiting throughout the pandemic. We felt that bringing it before the board at this point to know what they can and cannot do on the property would be, you know, beneficial.
Nate, in the application, it says rezone from suburban to West Coastville commercial. Is it to West Coastville commercial? Or
No,
suburban?
it's to the urban zone. Their initial application was incorrect. It would need to be urban to be able to put in those residential dwelling units that they're seeking. If it was going to be West Coastville commercial, they would be in a position to put a commercial structure there, and that would be right up against those residences as well, which would also be of concern.
I don't have any other questions. I do want to note one thing, just for clarification. In the notification lists, there is a Mark and Joanne Higgins listed. They are of no relation. I don't know who they are. So I just want to kind of put that out front right away. I don't have any other Higgins. Well, I don't know them. Any other commissioner comments or questions? Yes, Commissioner Robert.
Another benefit of doing this rezoning is the existing townhouses that are in the red area would be changed from a existing non-conforming to a conforming use. And my understanding of the building, other than the residences, was that it was going to be an equipment storage building, not really a maintenance building.
Yeah, I apologize. It was going to be equipment storage for their landscaping, snow removal and the like. So I don't think that they'd be making you know, repairs in there. But when I meant maintenance, I meant site maintenance, not necessarily maintenance of vehicles or whatnot, but everything that they need to take care of those sites was what they wanted to put in there.
And I thought that the planning commission did a good job of handling the discussion on it, and I support the 3 people that voted for.
I should note Tom is still here if he wants to fill in on anything I might have missed.
Anything to add, Mr. Chairperson? Anything from the app? Oh, you're not the app.
Yeah, the applicant, I don't know if the applicant's online
I
or
just
whatnot.
assume, Kate, I see a lawyer. I figure it's you. My apologies. My apologies. Okay. Any other comments or questions? Okay, then very good. Then we will move forward.
Well, so this is basically a request, and I think we should solidify, should we prepare an ordinance and a map change, or should we not?
You have to bring that to. Can't vote.
That's.
Yeah, we can't.
yeah,
So it would
fair enough.
go on one of the upcoming
And-
agendas.
And
Okay,
is it on the agenda
Fair
for
enough.
Thursday?
We would have to
Sorry.
add it. We would have to add it to the
So please
agenda.
add it.
I have one question,
Yes.
sorry. What is the recommendation from yourself and our professional staff?
I think Maury brings up a good point about bringing the existing properties out of nonconformity. That actually, I think, is more of a benefit for the good of the township than actually making it so that this new property can be developed at that level of density. Because we do want to avoid a situation where someone would have to constantly go to the zoning hearing board. I think we need to maybe think about a couple of items here. One, how often, if we do this, are we going to receive other zone change requests, as difficult pieces of land are to be developed in the township, because if we do one, will there be another request and another request after that? So that's just something to keep in mind. And two, what about, how do we want to handle the neighbors? Because my understanding is the neighbors had some concern about that number of residences behind them in their single family homes. So from a staff perspective, I would tell you, there are definitely concerns. I think concerns were voiced very well by the planning commission. But it did prevail based off the fact that there was a thought that this was more or less a transitional zone. So I would say err on the side of caution, because be careful what we wish for. If we provide one, then someone else is going to line up and someone else is going to line up. But on the other side, again, I think the bigger benefit is those other properties that are in nonconformity more than anything else. But I think we would be potentially opening a Pandora's box. I've thought about it a lot since the planning commission meeting. And that was one of the things, we felt, okay, is there a way to justify it? Yes, you could modify the zoning map and make it so that's available. But you know how many other properties we have like this in the township where someone might have an ask? It's a lot.
Well, I guess my question would be, and this is for the solicitor more than anything else, how does this not become a spot zoning issue when you're literally changing zoning for a piece of property?
Frankly, if you do what Nate's suggesting and pick up all the other area, I don't think you'd have a concern.
Okay. Okay. Any other commissioner comments or questions? Thank you. Okay. Thank you very much. Item number 6, discussion regarding dedication of the basin and streets for 3510 McCungy Road Land Development Project.
Now it's Kate's.
Now it's Kate's. Kate, I just see land development and you in the room. I just
And you
assume
just-
they're all yours. Okay, Mr. Jones.
Okay. I'll try and keep this brief because I think the applicants can explain also what their request is much better than I could. The proposal at 3510, as the board knows, is an interesting plot of land right on McCungy Road, right at intersection of Indian Creek and McCungy Road there. They have received zoning relief for numerous ordinance points, lot size, and a couple of other factors to be able to put in this horseshoe loop road here. There's 22 units proposed. One thing that we've been working very closely with the applicants on for quite some time is being able to fit this in and maintain quality of life and put in a really high quality development. One of the challenges that they're dealing with, which is an overarching question that we've dealt with consistently on the township side for some time now, is what are we going to do with the road and what are we going to do with the stormwater? So, we've had discussions in the past. 22 homes to take care of a road is a bit of a challenge. But a bigger challenge that we need to figure out is the applicants are proposing that we come up with a solution for managing the stormwater basin, which is in the upper left-hand corner of the site there, which would then go into our park there. What we need to figure out is how can this be potentially accommodated for the development? They're proposing to take responsibility for the portion of the basin on township property. There are several different options on how this could be done, through fees or through subdivision and dedication, or a number of different items. But they're seeking some clarification from the board tonight on a policy perspective so that they can make a submission to the planning commission and move forward with their project. The planning commission essentially deferred to the board, since you're going to be the ultimate decision makers on this, about how to handle both the road and the basin issue for the stormwater management. I should note, we're going to have another meeting tomorrow with respect to plantings. That's another issue. I feel confident that that is something that we can handle at the administrative level through figuring out how the different plantings on site or potentially off site go to meet the ordinance requirements. But these two issues, which are going to really impact stormwater design and how developers agreements and the plan are drawn up, are important for the board to make a decision on. So with that, I'd really like to hand it over to Kate to provide any more detail.
I think we'll probably take the road one first, because I think that's a little bit more straightforward than the stormwater. So obviously it's a smaller type development. The applicant is hoping that the township would be amenable to taking over ownership of the road, given the limited houses that are served by that development. I know in the past, obviously, that the policy has kind of changed. It seems to be more on a case-by-case basis. The planning commission was advocating for the township to maintain because of the size of the development, but obviously, said we had to defer to the board. So we wanted to, I guess, talk about that first, and then we can kind of get into a little bit more on the stormwater.
Commissioners, comments, questions in regards to road ownership?
We had agreed before that developments under 40 some odd units, that it was too much of a strain on the homeowners association. And so that we agreed that we would take them public, and I support that view.
Anybody else? I'm against private roads anyway, so it doesn't matter the size of it. So I think.
We can proceed with that.
Yeah.
Okay. So for the basin, I'm going to let you can kind of.
Sure. Hi, my name is Benjamin Barland. I'm one of the engineers from Holmes Cunningham on the project. As you may or may not be aware, the neighboring property to the west of this proposed development site is a township-owned park. As Nate mentioned, there's an existing stormwater basin on it. And what we're proposing to do, since most of our runoff from the existing site goes there anyway, we would direct it to the stormwater basin, expand it onto our property into one larger basin that meets today's standards, and use that as the stormwater management for the site. Now, there are some legal issues in that, as I understand, where you can't really have a basin that's bifurcated in responsibility, because it shares stormwater from both the township property, the neighboring development, and this property. So we're just looking for guidance on what the township would prefer, whether that is subdividing the portion of the basin that would be on our site and connecting it to the township site, whether it is an easement on the township property for the HOA to pay a monthly fee and maintain the full basin, just however the board would like to handle that.
Just one thing on that. The interesting thing about it is that by redesigning the basin, it will involve less maintenance than what is required now because of the current design standards for the basin. So even though it would be a change in the design from a pure maintenance standpoint, taking aside the legal aspect of who owns and conveyance, it will result in less maintenance because of the current requirements for a basin. As far as the ownership goes, it could be, a number of different ways to facilitate it. And again, it could be an easement, it could be conveyed in fee, it could be conveyed in fee, and then they pay a upfront, perpetual maintenance fee that the township holds and uses it to maintain their portion of it. It could be the HOA does the maintenance, and maybe the HOA does the maintenance that the township would otherwise do. There's a number of ways to do it. I think there's really two issues. One is the township okay with us, redesigning that basin? And then the second really becomes the maintenance aspect of it.
Before I get to Commissioner Robert, Nate, what is professional staff thought about this? See, don't you love when I do that to you? I know you get so excited.
Well, I'm also going to ask Brian to chime in here as well. There are a couple of different challenges that lie with having a basin on two property lines, right? So what are we going to do? Are we going to subdivide it off? Are we going to have an access easement? Are we going to just do a large scale fee in lieu of a couple of the items that I brought up before? Or are we just going to say, sorry, we're concerned about this. Design your basin differently, and then, put it into, with the recognition that the overflow would flow into this area. You have like essentially four choices about how you'd like to handle it. I think for us, we just consistently need to think about the long-term implications about it. And that means, one, we have 22 homeowners. They're going to have a homeowners association. Is the homeowners association going to be able to handle and manage any type of complex legal agreement or situation with the township? Two, what happens if the homeowners association someday, far in the future, ceases to exist? How is that going to impact township and the township's maintenance of the area, knowing that we have a basin that we have to take care of. So I would say whatever we can do to make sure that it's as clean cut as possible for the benefit of those future end user residents and for the taxpayers and township management is the route to take. And the best route to take on that is probably to make sure that they're responsible and that we have a clear line of distinction. So right now, I would say homeowners association. Coming up with any other type of plan, it could be a challenge for us. If we want to put a new policy in place where we start taking a fee for each and every basin that comes in, I think that'd be something we need to look at on a macro scale because we don't have it for any of the other stormwater basins from all those other subdivisions in years past. That's just my recommendation. I defer to Brian on anything else.
Sure, yeah, I think that, quite honestly, this is an unusual circumstance to be developing a basin on half on township property and half not. I know it's been the township's policy recently to not accept stormwater management, maintenance and responsibilities. I know the township has a lot of maintenance responsibilities as it is. And then the question kind of came up in the planning commission as can the HOA afford to maintain it with the number of units? It's really a balance of, does the township want more maintenance responsibilities? Probably not. Does the HOA have the capacity to take care of it then? And that's the question I think we're really trying to come to grips with.
Yeah, but I guess we would say is that I don't know that it's requiring more maintenance. We would argue that it would require
Less.
less maintenance. So it's definitely a more unique circumstance than other I mean, obviously I've been involved with a lot of different developments where we're just saying we would like the township to take over, maintenance of the stormwater.
Okay, Commissioner Robert.
Okay, the biggest issue, it seems to me, is ownership. And I understand that, okay, so my recommendation is to sell the detention pond to the homeowners association. My understanding of the issue of that is that it has to go out for bid and somebody else might buy it. But if it's being sold with a requirement of perpetual maintenance, I can't imagine anybody else wanting to buy a detention pond with a requirement of perpetual maintenance, and they can't do anything else with it. So, Mr. Solicitor?
You would need to go to public bid. It doesn't resolve Nate's issue, which is the homeowner association is still going to have
And they
to
enforce it.
maintain this in perpetuity. It's 20 homeowners. So if the board is inclined to go this way, Kate, that disclosure is going to have to be bold-faced, all one page, etc.
So the homeowners association would be willing to take responsibility for maintenance?
Well, I mean, the preference would be because the township's maintaining it now, and that's where the water goes to convey it to the township in this unique circumstance, but convey it after it's redesigned and rebuilt. So it's really not putting an additional onus on the township. It's continuing with the existing, onus that they have now. In fact, we would argue with a reduced maintenance responsibility because of the new design, as opposed to selling us your land. I mean, I don't even know how you would propose a cost for it or a fee, or how much would it be? I just think given the unique circumstance with this, and given the existing maintenance obligations that are there, it would make more sense just in this unique circumstance to convey it to the township after it's designed, get an easement now to do all the work that would be needed, redesign it, and then convey to the township.
Well, okay, I thought all along that the homeowners association was going to maintain it.
The homeowners association can maintain it. It seemed like people were, when we were at the planning commission, there was concern expressed about having the viability of an HOA to do the maintenance. So then the discussion at the planning commission was, well, maybe does it make sense for the township to potentially own it and maintain? So we're just looking for guidance. This is just, again, a very unique circumstance, but I also don't, especially given the fact that by redesigning it, you're reducing the maintenance obligation, I think makes it a little bit more of a unique consideration for the town.
Yeah, that's an important point to bring up, Kate. We got to remember that our ordinance and then also for their third-party approvals possibly as well. We're talking about a naturalized basin. So instead of getting mowed every week during the summer season, it gets mowed twice a year. And that cuts down on the cost. That being said, we just, want to continue to be mindful, and I don't want to speak for other departments, but, the township has a lot of assets that we are responsible for maintaining right now as it is. And we just need to be careful that, again, kind of like I brought up on the other discussion, we want to make sure that we don't take on any more responsibility than we absolutely have to.
Right. But I would say that you're not in this situation.
No, well, we just want to find a solution that's workable where for the time being and hopefully in perpetuity, the HOA is responsible for this.
So it sounds like really the question is shifting. I thought the main issue was who was going to own the pond. And well, I still think that having two parcels of land forming one pond, covering one pond is stupid. So if it's owned by the township or if it's owned by the homeowners association, I would like to see it a land transfer going one way or the other to have it be a single parcel so that it just seems to make a lot more sense.
One ownership. I understand what you're saying.
And then so the real question is who should maintain the pond? And I had been under the impression all along that the homeowners association was willing to maintain the pond. And so now it sounds like you're offering the other part of the pond to be maintained by the township.
Well, I think really it came up though at the planning commission, Maureen, the discussion was, although the HOA can maintain it, does it make sense for them to maintain it given this unique circumstance? So if the board says we want us to the HOA to maintain it, then they'll maintain it. It just seemed, once you look at the type of design, the redesign, and that you're reducing from, as Nate said, once a month to, twice a year, it's already reducing the maintenance obligations for the township. So it's certainly not putting an additional onus on the township. The redesign would reduce the onus on the township.
Mr. Township Manager, what is your view on the township maintaining that pond?
From the management side, I do not want to have a commingled basin as we see. So then we have to determine whose responsibility, even if the HOA chooses to say that they're not responsible at some point. So I think a commingled dual lot basin is not in the best interest of, the township management side, even though it may be good planning. And I would say as far as the maintenance, I would not want to add any further maintenance to the township. I get that, there's an understanding, I guess, that this basin's going to now take less maintenance. However, from what I look and see, it appears that there's twice the size of a basin. So when we get a sinkhole there in 20 years and we're trucking $20,000-$30,000 worth of flow fill into it, at that point, was the fee sufficient if we choose to take a fee up front? Are we going to have further concerns in multiple years? So, the best thing is for the developer to manage their own stormwater on their own site, have that turned over to an HOA and not commingle into our facility. Would be my suggestion.
So you're recommending build a separate detention pond that flows into our detention pond?
Or have that separate lot that the HOA takes over, but I don't know how you would ever convey that, but You know, we're fine taking care of the facility we have now. And they can take care of their facility that they have and not commingle. That would be my recommendation, at least on the management side.
I love it. This is, we get like 15, we never get like 15 different
I
things.
know.
Interesting. This is this is unique.
I think you only have frankly two options. One,
Yeah.
one is what Maury suggested, and that is the township sell it and then they maintain the whole thing. Frankly, I don't even think you need to do that. You could just require the HOA to maintain their side and our side under a stormwater covenant that's recorded against both properties. So the concern still is the HOA, but you can get out from under being in the basin business, at least here.
I would say if we had to pick, I mean, I'd rather not have to do the public bid and all that, because I don't even know where to start with that price wise. But if we can do it as a easement and a declaration, that
Out of curiosity, and this is only out of curiosity because I hate HOA. If the HOA isn't responsible for the maintenance of this and we're taking the roads, is there still an HOA?
I don't think you need an easement.
For the open space, there might be a little bit of an HOA fee for people, but I'm
Oh,
not
yeah, open space.
Okay.
exactly what that would look like if
Sure.
you did take them. But there is open space still.
Yeah, no, I'm just,
Might be-
yeah. I'm
Can-
curious.
On the existing lot with the footprint or maybe a slightly enhanced footprint of that basin area, can you go deeper and handle the water there potentially to avoid the situation entirely?
I don't believe that we can go deeper, mostly based on the discharge elevation. There's no significant infiltration in this basin regardless because of karst formations. So we can't infiltrate. However, just based on where the discharge elevation is, I don't know that we could have a separate discharge that's higher up. Or I'm sorry, that's lower down because the existing grade is higher on the other side.
So if this wasn't a township owned lot and this was a private, landowner or a private business or a commercial business with a parking lot right next to it, how would you be handling your stormwater in that instance then?
You would see what was already designed and then you would approach that existing, let's just say for the sake of argument, it wasn't the township that owned it, but there's an existing basin and it was privately owned. We would approach them with the same consideration. Can we redesign the basin? Can we make it so that it requires less maintenance? And then you figure out the logistics of how to do it. Again, it would be back to what we're talking about now. Who owns it? Do you convey it? Do you do half of it? Do you do a shared maintenance after the fact? I don't think it's any different necessarily.
And what if they tell you no? What if that private property owner tells you, sorry, we're not going to give you access to our basin to handle your stormwater?
The only other option in that case would be essentially a shallow, very large footprint individual basin that would take up probably most of the available open space. So there's a pipeline easement there that we wouldn't be able to go into. But it would take up the majority of the open space.
What about a wet pond?
I don't know that we could meet our stormwater volume requirements with a wet pond. So the stormwater facility that we're proposing is called a managed release concept, which is, it's not a wet pond, but there is some subsurface water storage that releases slowly, and that's how the basin gets its credit for DEP permitting. So this would have, water tolerant plantings. It's that sort of thing that doesn't need to be mowed as much. But I don't think a proper wet pond with standing water would be appropriate.
I mean, I think from my perspective, trying to keep this as clean as possible. I'd probably be more inclined to have one improved pond with some sort of a stormwater covenant as the solicitor recommends that is maintained by the HOA. Now, the pitfall there, at least from my perspective, is the HOA could cease to exist at one point, which is going to fall back on us regardless. However, I'd like to put off the regardless as long as humanly possible, with the hopes that the HOA stays forever. My experience with HOAs leave me with post-traumatic stress disorder from living there and trying to sell my house and not being able to put a yard sign out to sell my house or change the pink front door I have and all that other fun stuff. But to me, I think it's the cleanest way to do it, to have a pond. I don't want to see two ponds next to each other, one that looks super nice and one that's antiquated, or at least an older style, one that has to be maintained twice as much as the other one. But I'd like to keep it off of our books as long as we possibly can, because we are stretched thin when it comes to that type of thing. I think that would be my preference as it stands. And to me, the cleanest way to do it, aside from actually selling the land, which I think would be great if it wasn't a public bidding process and trying to put a number on it. While I agree with Maury, I don't know who else would want to go buy a retention basin unless they're crazy. I think that's the way I want to do this, if that's the option.
Then, okay, if we go with one pond, I still think it makes sense to have it all in one parcel. So if the easiest way to do that is have the pond portion of the development dedicated to the township with a contract for them to do the maintenance, then that would accomplish what I just heard you saying.
Just looking at the solicitor, I'm just.
Yeah. Yeah, I don't think that's a necessary step personally.
Huh?
I think that as long as we have a covenant, and I will say to Kay publicly, we'll want to be able to lien not just the homeowner association land, but the homeowners. God forbid we have to come in here and do anything. That's going to be the best protection. Not, it's not 100%, but it's I think as good as you can get. And that what it is putting a stormwater covenant over the entire basin, the new basin, if you will. Making sure in their declaration they have all the disclosures that we could possibly want, so no homeowner could come back and say you didn't tell me. And then the township's rights would include, among everything else we put into the stormwater covenant, the right to lien the individual townhomes in the event we have to go in and do maintenance.
Well, and on top of it, not only disclosures for the sale or the initial buyer, but we have an ordinance or rules now that it has to be clearly communicated down the line from owner to owner to owner. So, I mean, that gets trickier because you don't have control over that. But it needs to be.
I think the typical way, the better way to do that. So what happens is unless it's in a deed that comes in the chain of title, that's when people lose sight of it. So I'm thinking what Dave's talking about, in addition to your typical covenant that you're talking about it sort of being in the deed. So that way it's caught by the title searcher more quickly than somebody looking through the HOA documents. And I think I don't know that you can guarantee that each person's going to tell the next person, but probably the best mechanism to do that would be it's in the deed, because at least the deed is pulled. And the deed could either cross-reference or have language, it provides a better notice opportunity, which is, I think, what you're getting at, as opposed to.
Yeah, I know we passed an ordinance in terms of having to disclose certain restrictions on land down the line. And I don't know whether it's because we have to note the deed or not, but there's something in there. I know we do have that language somewhere. And I think it came out of the elbow lane.
Kate and I can work on something. If the board's inclined to go in this direction, we can certainly put something in a deed that's a similar notice disclosure to all the people buying in the community.
Okay, so is everybody in agreement that there's going to be two different parcels in the same detention pond? that the detention pond will be expanded and reworked by the developer, and that ultimately the homeowners will have responsibility for doing maintenance to the pond.
For as long as there's a homeowners association.
Well,
Hopefully indefinitely.
well, it would be a lien, if there was an
Right.
expense, then there would be a lien against the homeowners, and
Yeah,
so
that's-
even if the homeowners association went out of business, then the homeowners would get a lien against their house.
Of course, we're in workshop, so we can't take any vote. I would ask if any of the other three commissioners have any strong aversion against going in the direction that we've been going tonight, which is the stormwater covenant, placing the onus on the HOA to maintain the basin.
I just wanted to follow up with Manager Vital. Understanding your position, what do you think of this alternative, if you will? Completely understanding your position of not wanting,
No, I always just think it's difficult on two separate lots, as we stated before. When we're out in the field making a repair, how am I gonna, prove to the HOA that I was on their side? If they're not, if something happens with these homeowners and the HOA becomes defunct, all right, well, I had to repair that over here, so I'm gonna lien you for this component of the work. But we had an issue over on our side and I'm not gonna lien you for that. It's figuring that component out like long-term.
Well-
The short term, it's a,
But he was saying that we would be responsible for.
Right, what I'm hearing David say is
All-
regardless of what parcel it's on, it's considered one basin,
Yeah.
and the maintenance, regardless of where it is, falls on the homeowners.
so on the township side, just for clarification, so on the township side of the basin, there won't be anyone saying that's township water coming from another development that caused that washout, erosion, XYZ on the township owned parcel. And we're not going to pay for that, take a lien on it, or fight a repair. Because it's all one basin and that takes water from another community.
If I think I understand the question, could you possibly be sued if somewhere down gradient there was water and someone was injured? The answer to that would be yes. But there would be a hopefully fail-safe indemnity in the stormwater agreement, preventing us from being, meaning the township from being liable. It again would place the onus on the HOA. But again, it's a legal document. I don't disagree with you there. It's a legal document, but it is recorded. And if you put it in the deeds, at least everybody's on notice that they have to do this. Obviously, the other self-help here is that this is one of the stormwater covenants. You got to go out every single year and possibly after rainstorms and making sure they're doing their job. So, you're going to have to be diligent with respect to this, no question about it.
One comment with all this being said, so with your recommendation, David, that wouldn't take it off our books. We would still have the burden of cost there, and reference to the manager vitals, would it would still be co-mingled? Use that term, and then
They would be 100% responsible for what are right now two basins, which I think are going to be made into one big basin. But either way it goes, they're going to be responsible. It is your land. That's how there's a nexus. God forbid someone downstream is injured. The nexus is you still own it, even though you're not operating it.
so
But it should be cash neutral if they take it over.
so it takes it off our books.
The maintenance,
The
but not the ownership.
Yeah.
Sorry.
Yeah, I think it would be cost neutral for you, other than sending your inspectors out to make sure they're doing their job like you do all the other basins.
And the last thing is, come up with something
Be as clean gets when it comes to legal documents.
We'll leave it in the able hands of Ms.
Yes.
Durso, our fine solicitor.
And Solicitor Broom. Are there any other comments or questions from the board?
You okay with it?
Okay, then
we don't have to go to the formal meeting. We can just take this advice and
Yeah, 'cause
proceed through
we're not
the.
voting on anything.
No, I know, but I'm saying we don't need to go to a actual meeting for you to vote on it. We can adhere to the guidance that we're receiving, or do we
I-
need to go to a meeting?
The way I would put it is, I think we've made our positions individually clear. And if, as long as you keep working with the solicitor and the planning director, I think you'll know where to go, or if you have to go.
Yeah, I'm just saying, you're not expecting us to show up on Thursday to get a formal
No,
thing on this.
no, no,
Okay.
no, because
Okay.
directive, it's not a decision.
Right. That's what I thought. I just wanted to make sure that if,
Okay, you're not on the agenda.
No,
Thursday.
no.
no, nor am I asking, do we need to be on an agenda? We're just going to take all this back and continue through the land development process with all of this in mind.
You have
Yes.
a direction and.
I have multiple directions from that.
And,
I
Yeah,
get,
no,
and you and David can straighten out the details.
we'll get to a comfort level
Yes.
with the solicitor, and then which addresses everybody collectively as best as we can, knowing we can't satisfy everybody.
correct.
Okay,
And nor do you have.
gotcha.
All right, thank you very much.
Yeah. Thank you.
Thank you very much for your time.
You sure you're an engineer? Because you look like you should be like in high school. I just want to point that out.
Time I get
I mean, you sounded like you knew what you were talking about, but I'm not 100% sure. And okay, good. Doogie. The eighties reference, here we go.
Yeah.
Okay, item number 7, review resolution setting the terms for zoning hearing board members. 7.1 ordinance advertised for adoption on March 16th. Mr.
Yep.
Solicitor. Oh,
David? you
I
want
don't
this
know.
one?
You want to go planning or solicitor?
This is very short. This is what we've been discussing with both the planning commission and the zoning hearing board. This brings the zoning hearing board to 5 members with no alternates.
Okay. And just out of curiosity, are we required to appoint the alternates to the full term member, or can we change the alternates in the process for other people?
There are no more alternates.
No, no,
This is
no, no.
changing it.
Oh.
Do you have to, does the township have to name the people that are alternates onto
To
the board?
full-time, the new full-time member.
That's a procedural.
Okay, good. I just want options.
But anyway, that's what the resolution is doing. That's in the, that's what the resolution is doing. It's actually reappointing them, but they're all members. So, and then you'll see in there, the old terms are listed, but because they're going to be 5-year terms, we'll have to reset everyone's terms. So there's only one expiring a year.
I don't know if I'm comfortable appointing all those people to full-time spots. It's just 'cause he's sitting there. Come on, let's have a little fun. I was talking about Bill Royer. I wasn't talking about. Ron. Okay. Any comments or questions other than my stupid humor? Okay, moving on. Number 8, review resolution for sale of personal property. Bruce.
Thank you. So it's necessary that we bring certain items over $2,000 per hour disposal property before the board. You'll see several items there listed. We've also included some that haven't met the threshold just for record keeping and to bring it before the board that we're going to move forward and go to municipal bid. So we do have those estimated values. That's what we're going to be looking for, hopefully, on that process at least. So just have to have the board consider declaring those items surplus and authorizing a sale. So that's what you have before you on that one.
Go for it.
Yep, we're good to go. All right, we'll keep everybody updated. Our policy says once we sell, we'll bring back a list for the board. And then if there's anything below value, below that threshold, it says that the township manager can, dispose of that or throw it away or properly get rid of it. So we will do that and give an update to the board. Item 9, if it's all right, we can move to that. Farm bid. Mr. Cup did put out the bid for farming. You'll see it included in your packet. He did make a recommendation. You'll see the highest bidder was New Hard Farms. They're out of North Whitehall. And this does include now part of our land for Dorney. So we have the ability to do this is a 1 year, and we have the option to continue to do 1 year extensions for a total of 5 years. So if things would change, we would need to take less land out. We have that flexibility in that bid. You'll also notice there's an increase of 3% each year to the payment price if we choose to keep the same farmer and the same acreage. We're mindful that we, may have some future plans to take some acreage out or reduce some things. And we feel we have the flexibility with that. So the current, what we did last year in farming for our lease was around $13,000. So you'll see that this is 31,674. So we've seen a little bit of an increase from our prior time. Now, of course, we did add some properties. So, and this also includes the deduction from the 9 acres the Turnpike needs as well out of that. We made a bid amendment.
I'm okay with it for this year, but in future years, I would prefer to see individual farms bid separately, so people that want to do CSAs can get in on one parcel and not have to take all of it.
What's CSA?
Crop share.
Crop
So,
share.
Crop share.
yeah, basically,
Community
you pitch money in with a bunch of other people and they grow instead of like feed corn and soy, the cash crops, they grow vegetables, and then that's split amongst the members. So
Okay.
basically the members then get the yield and they could be growing any type of veggie.
Are we
So,
doing
so
that in Kratzer?
we aren't, but that's the long-term plan, right? To do a CSA there. And that's what makes sense to try to figure out how we can do those components. So we could award this and then execute our option to in the next year. We just have to submit another farm bid out and say, hey, look, we want to take an individual farm. The way Stan has these grouped, if you look too, on Renee, I think you had some diagrams, Renee. He actually has them by farms and acreage too, of that component. So I don't know how many we would want to drop out of that actual plan or out of the bid. I don't know if you want more than one farm or you want certain acreage sizes we could look at.
Well, I think we ought to be looking for CSA farmers that are interested in some of the land, and so that we do have something other than corn.
Yeah.
Is there a way that we can gauge the interest there? Do we have folks calling or reaching out to us for that purpose?
We could try. I know the Licton Walners, and of course, they're one of our mainstay generational farmers, have been trying the CSA concept. And I think they had 1 or 2 people, and that's kind of faded away a little bit. I don't know if they have anybody else now that's down at their facility. They lost both farmers there, and they're really trying to push a CSA type thing to keep their farm going as well. So I don't know if there's a lot of interest at this point, but for us to float and I always thought maybe partner with them too to say, hey, look, there's ground with some older farmers that are trying to keep this moving. Is there a way that we can get CSA there and kind of promote that? And then if that takes off too, get them at Kratzer, get them at our facilities to kind of get that open public farming part,
Rob, the vice president vice chair of the EAC, was in contact with some CSA farmers, and they weren't prepared to bid this year, but would like to next year, apparently.
It's a great idea, but gotta see what the demand is.
Yeah, I mean, maybe we can get them rolling too. We can contact them, get them with the Licton Walners as well to see if they can really kind of get in and then maybe get their feet a little bit wet and then would be ready to have some area next year.
Okay. But yeah, just want to leave the flexibility, so rather than just having somebody have to bid on all the land.
Any other comments or questions? Item 10, review bids for crack ceiling, bid opening February 27th. What'd
We
you do
did,
today?
we did have the engineer, go out and, seek bids for our annual crack sealing program. Before we resurface roads, we make sure that the crack sealing, does happen. I would note, and I'll let Brian go into it. We did, receive two bidders. They are both, under our estimated budgeted amount. We had budgeted 115,000. I'll let Brian review the bids, and the process.
All right, we've received two bids for crack sealing, Sirloin Corp. For $102,968 and Asphalt Maintenance Solutions for $111,935. Sirloin Corp., they're actually both pre-qualified, PennDOT pre-qualified bidders, so they're both certainly capable of doing the work. Our recommendation is go with the lower bidder.
And we're going to verify internally too some quantities as we adjust the road, program. So that's kind of our max threshold number that we would be at. We're hopeful that, we have some quantities we may be able to save on so that, we can have a cost savings as well and be in line with our resurfacing. We did, cut resurfacing back a little bit, in this year's budget. So, the amounts we used were a little higher for this bid. So we're hoping we can, manage that component of the project. So we'll have that on the, Thursday night agenda for your consideration.
Yeah, I wanted to say that might, and I could be wrong. I think it's the first time that AMS wasn't a low bidder
Since I've been here.
since I've been here.
Mhm.
It's interesting. And we usually actually have a hard time getting a second.
Chris, where is Somerset? It's out west, right?
Western part of the state.
It's pretty far.
About 2 hours, 2.5 hours.
Yeah,
They must be busy.
okay. Very good. Any comments or questions? Okay, discussion for density for mixed use. I think this is probably Maury.
Yeah, we were asked to put this item on the agenda for, the board to have a discussion about, and get some feedback for some of the thoughts that we heard, with the, one, zoning request we heard, but then that, furthered some discussion, about density in our mixed use area. So I know, Maury had asked to kind of put this on, so.
Commissioner Robert.
Okay, so there are 5 mixed-use developments that are in varying forms of development in the township. The first one was the Weisses and Apartments. Ms. Durso submitted an ordinance that we discussed at length. And that's what ended up as the ordinance for the township for the mixed use. And the 8.5 dwelling units per acre on just the residential portion fit their requirements and was accepted by the township. In the ordinance, it did encourage having apartments over the commercial uses, but not until the second phase of that project, or which was dealt with as a separate development, did I realize that the non-residential portion did not have a limit on the number of dwelling units that could be provided. And so it happened to turn out that it was that 8.5 dwelling units per acre for the entire parcel covered the number of dwelling units that were provided. Then we had that 1 acre, there was the 1 acre parcel on Broad Street that initially came in with 50 dwelling units per acre for one apartment building. It is now coming in as a mixed use with 7 apartments and 2 office type uses, which would fit within the 8.5 dwelling units per acre. And, okay, so again, in the West Coastville commercial, there was no density requirement for apartments, so the 50 could have gone through, except for the requirement that apartment buildings can only have 16 units if it goes in a single line. If it's L-shaped, they can have 24. And so that put a cap on that they couldn't go above 24. But apartments and mixed-use apartments in West Coastville commercial of 8.5 dwelling units per acre would seem to be reasonable. The Hamilton Crossing North, they were before us at the last meeting. And there was the 372 that was quoted and then the 318 of what they actually had. And that was because following the 8.5 dwelling units per acre for the non-commercial part, they could only fit 318 units. And they did not want to bog down the process by trying to fight that. But if we go with the 8.5 dwelling units for the entire parcel is 50.1 acres. And that would end up being 425 units that they could have. So it would let them have the two buildings that they wanted to have initially and maybe even fit in another one. But that would be consistent with, so we have 4 different things that 8.5 dwelling units over the entire parcel would work fine. Then we get to the I-78 piece that we discussed at the last meeting. And 8.5 dwelling units over the entire parcel would be about 500 units. And which is below the number that they would like to have. I did not think of it, but Mr. R.W. Beitler did mention that having transfer of development rights would be a way to bridge the number. So it could be transfer development rights between the our property and this property and increase the density, and then we would end up with some preserved land that we wouldn't have to buy and so forth. And now the then you get to, well, how many development rights would come from the far tract? Okay, so right now, the zoning in the suburban zone is 1 acre lots if you require on-lot water or sewer. Another option is you could go to the open space development criteria, which is in the suburban zone, you could have 2 dwelling units per acre, and then require that that be bunched together so you maintain open space. If the okay, it's 54 acres, and actually I would be fine with going from the 8.5 to the 12 dwelling units per acre, which would be 200 development rights if they were willing to sell the development. So that would maintain a consistency of the 8.5 dwelling units per acre and provide an exception to be able to go higher if you're willing to provide development. So I thought we ought to have a discussion about, do we want to be consistent between all of the zones of what density we should have? And should there be any kind of quid pro quo for increasing the density in one zone?
Comments, questions? The only comment and this is what I get back to, this is my fear about having a number, one specific number, is that I think density needs to be treated differently depending on where you're talking. If there was a larger piece of land that was located off of Route 100, and I'm thinking about in the future, long after I'm, but somebody comes in and decides that all that agricultural land gets rezoned and you can build whatever you want. Now you're talking about hundreds of acres. And to say that it should be 8.5 dwelling units or 10 dwelling units or 12 dwelling units in an area like that would be disastrous. Because you're talking about infrastructure that couldn't handle, I don't know if it could handle 8.5 dwelling units per acre in that part of town. If you're talking about a part of town which has access to 78, 476, and 222, I think while traffic is still a concern, and it's going to be a concern wherever you go, you have more opportunity, or at least a better infrastructure. What I would hope would be an expansion of the infrastructure in an area like that that's used by so many people. I do like the option of having the ability to use the number of dwelling units per lot or per acre as a condition during conditional use, because everything seems to be a conditional use 90% of the time right now. I would be, I think, as it's been discussed, everything that's being developed right now is going to be unique in some way. My hope is that the Jandal property isn't 12 per acre. I hope it's closer to 10 when it's all said and done. I have no problem going to them and saying, hey, would you consider this? Would you consider selling your development rights on the far tract in order to guarantee that you get the 12? Because right now, there's no guarantee they get 12. It's there for now, but it's step one in a very long process, and they could come to conditional use, and we may determine based on traffic counts for PennDOT feedback or something else that it really shouldn't be more than 10, or it really shouldn't be more than 8, and that becomes a condition of that development. I personally, and I wasn't here for that meeting, so it's hard for me to say, I had no issue with what they wanted to build on Broad Street the way it was. Because I think what you're trying to do in that area is provide easy access in, easy access out. I probably would have said yes to that. I don't know. I don't know that you want to be that rigid at this point in time when there are mechanisms that can help change it.
Well, okay, a couple of things. One is that these mixed-use developments are only in commercial zones. By being in a commercial zone, it defines that there is infrastructure around to support it. And
Okay.
because, okay, on Route 100, there are 2 of those mixed-use developments. On Crocs Road and the bypass, there's one. And now the one one I would question is on Broad Street. And getting 8 units out onto Hamilton from Broad Street is bad enough, and trying to get 50 out would be a disaster. And it seems like if you don't keep things consistent, then you are doing spot zoning for a particular parcel.
Well, only if you're changing the zoning to accommodate the number of units. The number of units isn't specifically specified. You're allowed, you're allowed a certain number of dwelling units in a mixed-use development
So it's 8.5. And so if you pick one.
by
parcel-
lane, okay, go ahead.
And if you pick one parcel and you say it can go up to 12, then that is sort of spot zoning.
Well, what I would say back to you, one sense, and only because Attorney Durso was still here, I voted against the Weiss. I voted against the first time, I'm voting against the next time. That's just to be very clear. I didn't think it should go there anyway. But, yeah, listen, I don't have an issue with floating ideas and putting them out there, because that's what's the beauty of a democracy and a board. You know, if enough people say yes, we say yes. If enough people say no, it's no. I think everything is on the table. Everything is possible. It's just a matter, but I also think you take into account what staff says, because they are the professionals. You know, I'm not a professional planner. I'm not a professional engineer. I'm certainly not a professional traffic engineer, although I think I could be at this point in my life. So I think everything is feasible. It's just a matter of, you know, what the group agrees on when it comes down to it. Listen, if we want to go to Mr. Jandal and say, hey, listen, we can guarantee the 12 units per acre by selling us the far track development rates. Awesome. I mean, the one thing I throw back at there is that land is a little less valuable with the fact that he's not going to have built-in water and sewer now because we bought the land across the street. So is it that valuable to him at this point? I don't know, but why not? Why not give it a shot? I would.
Okay, but so if we pass the ordinance that we sent out for advertising last, then we would lose the opportunity to do that, and we would be doing this spot zoning, and we would be inconsistent.
I don't want you to go that we would be doing the spot zone, because I don't know that it is. And by saying that it is making the legal determination, at least publicly. Yeah, listen, are we in a weaker position right now? Absolutely. But we can still ask. But the thing is, I think we've advertised at this point in time, and David, you correct me if I'm wrong, once it's advertised, is there a certain amount of time before it has to be voted on, or can it just be advertised and voted on whenever?
You don't have to vote on it ever.
Okay.
It is a legislative act, and you're not under any obligation to vote on.
So we'll see if it comes to we can always vote at a meeting as to whether to vote to bring it for a vote. Vote and vote. Vote for a vote.
Well, I thought it would be worthwhile to discuss it.
Yeah, absolutely. I think discussion is good. I think one of the unique things that we have as a board, and we've had for a while now, is what we do is extremely transparent for a lot of different reasons. But I also think what's also good about this board, and I would say this to Ron all the time, is that we don't all agree on everything. And that's a good thing, because I think you get better outcomes.
Yeah.
But yeah, listen, I think everything you say is valid. I just don't know if there's one size fits all for what we have or what we're going to be having. But I think there's a lot of discussion that has to come through those stages. I mean, the one tonight is probably the most unique one I've had so far. But I think we're going to be seeing a lot more of that just because everything is so small at this point and so obtuse and abstract. I mean, literally, every piece of land is abstract at this point.
Okay, and so the other side of it is, if we do grant the 12 dwelling units per acre to the Jandal project,
Mhm.
then everybody else can come through and say, well, you gave him 12, and so why can't you give me 12? And
Absolutely.
it seems like stopping at some place makes sense.
No, I think that's a fair point. And I think will bring up arguments if someone wants more than what they get.
If I could chime in, that would not be the case because this is zoning that is specific only to the highway enterprise zone. So I know we're talking about commercial mixed use throughout the township in different zoning districts down off of Route 100 along West Coastville. But I think it should be noted that it would only be the HE zone, which we have signified as our economic development zone for the township. When we redid the zoning in 2019, the terminology of the economic breadbasket of the township for the future of the township was used. It was previously the most heavy industrial zoning district in the township. We turned it into essentially an economic development zone. And then we have a significant economic development project that has actually come in. The number of units on a mixed use development would only apply to a proposal of such in that zoning district and the parcels in that zoning district. There are parcels right now that this application is being proposed on. There are parcels that are only in this district and nowhere else in the township that could essentially someday potentially be utilized for a mixed use zone there too. But you would have to be in the HE zone. It wouldn't mean that you're over in West Coastville. It wouldn't mean that you're off of Prox Road. It wouldn't mean that you're off of Route 100. It would mean that you're in the HE zone. And that's no different than economic development zones and target zones that are done in plenty of other municipalities.
Okay, so the way this whole thing started on that parcel was they were saying, well, this is the only commercial zone that doesn't have the mixed use. And so then the Hamilton Crossing North comes in and says, well, there's no difference between the highway enterprise zone and the highway and commercial zone. So why can't I get the 12 dwelling units per acre? And so it's just a cascading thing of, I want what the other guy has. And so if we cap it someplace, then.
But there's degrees in intensity of use. The West Coastville commercial zone is our lightest commercial zone. It was initially, we had standard commercial across the township. It didn't matter in the context of where you were located. We decided we want to try and preserve the village feel of West Coastville and stop the joining of properties together to try and promote adaptive reuse of the existing buildings, which we managed to achieve and working with the folks at Notch. And we're starting to see with a couple of other community outreach projects and developments around there. Then we had the mid-range commercial zone, which is our standard one, our highway commercial zone. And then the highest level of intensity of use, I would say, because again, we designate it as an economic development zone, was our highway enterprise zone. So it's the zone that's closest to major infrastructure for the township, which is where you put high intensity use. And that's planning 101. It's in every periodical you can see now. And actually, we're not new to this game because if you drive down the Northeast Extension, you see it outside of Conshohocken, you see it right in King of Prussia. You can drive down to Maryland and see it everywhere around those two cities. In fact, we're just basically catching up with what a lot of other people are starting to do now as a suburban community that is reaching maturity, that is close to a city, that is trying to, one, provide housing for regional housing needs, but two, also take part in economic development, which is what we're all trying to achieve as part of looking at the zoning ordinance that's proposed for us right now for this Top Golf mixed use proposal.
Could you just come up to the microphone, please?
I guess, so my question would be, as it relates to the,
Could you pull a little?
that part, as it relates to the Crocs Road project, are we saying that the board would potentially be inclined to consider application of the 8.5 dwelling units per acre across the entirety of the tract, as opposed to limiting it to just the residential portion, which is what as Maury correctly pointed out, the mixed-use development ordinance that I did draft back with Woodmont, taking your dislike of the Woodmont project aside, Brian, because that is the HC zone as opposed to the WC zone or even the commercial zone.
Kate, just to jump in so that there's no muddying the water, I mean, the only ordinance that we're advertising right now is the one for the HE zone. So if we were talking about other districts, the board would have to consider it and direct staff to look at modifying an entirely new ordinance and going down that path to take it to the planning commission and basically do what we've already done. So I think just for edification of everybody watching tonight and everybody in the room, you know, tonight we can't really, we voted to advertise one ordinance. We'd have to like look at something else at this.
And this has nothing to do with that advertised ordinance. This is discussing the mixed use parameters in all of the various zones and trying to get it consistent. And so I would support having the Hamilton Crossing North go ahead and have 8.5 dwelling units per acre for
Using
all of the
entire tract.
acreage, which brings you to about 425 units.
Right.
But the whole, we have not come to a conclusion, as you can tell.
Understood.
And-
I'd just like to go back to the client to say, maybe you want to consider essentially proposing an amendment to the ordinance that creates a different mixed use requirement for the HC zone.
I would like it to be consistent across all zones, that it be 8.5 dwelling units per acre for the entire parcel. Because
But then Brian's not going to like my Woodmont because that's
Your
going to give me
phase
more.
two.
It doesn't matter, not.
Yeah.
your phase 2 Beaumont ended up being 8.5 across the entire parcel.
For the Woodmont, yes, it did. Yeah.
And so, yeah, and you wanted.
And the
three-
Broad Street is too.
Yeah, and Broad
That's me
Street,
too,
it's
yeah.
basically the same. And so it's really just the 318 that you really originally wanted to have 372 that if you follow the consistently, then you ought to be able to get 425.
And Maury, you and I have been talking about this for the better part of 5 years. And I think we can respectfully agree to disagree. I would just like to note that as we've talked about the rezoning in 19 and projects as they've come in, Maury likes consistency across the board at 8.5 dwelling per units per acre. And my recommendation is that it is okay to have different degrees of density of dwelling units per acre in apartments and mixed use, depending on the zone that they're in, because there are certain areas that are better affixed to a higher degree of density versus not. It's the difference between having an area that has a high density, like in a town center, versus not being in a town center. So multiple degrees within zoning districts is fine by me. It's just an ideological thing. And I know, as Maury has suggested, he'd like 8.5 dwelling units per acre. I just want to make sure that that basically this is a discussion we've had for what, 5 years?
And they're all commercial zones and they have reasonable infrastructure. They're on either Route 100 or Hamilton Boulevard or the bypass. And so
But I think.
why
you're
make a big differentiation?
But I think you're talking about two different things, though. One is the 8.5 versus the 12. The other is what you apply it to, because the
Right, yeah.
HE, you're not applying it just to a residential section. You're applying it across the entire tract.
Yeah.
So I think you're really talking about two different things. I don't have a problem with the 8.5 and I don't have a problem with the 12. I'm more, should it be applied toward the entire?
Well,
tract?
in Woodmont it is. It's applied across. the whole
Yeah,
thing.
but that just ended up that way. It wasn't intentionally done that way.
I think it was good lawyering,
It might have been,
just my own personal.
even though you didn't like it.
You made it
Anyway,
blush.
I'm not going to, I don't want to take more of your time, but I just wanted to kind of take the temperature and maybe we will propose something for that project.
Okay, but so yeah, so we have three that are already set to be over the entire, the density is over the entire acreage. And so I don't see why yours north of the bypass shouldn't be either.
Thank you.
You may want to think Citronia Road plays a little bit in that, but we can debate that.
Just the fact that you can allow it doesn't mean that
Yeah,
it can
that
be
you
built
built,
there.
right.
Because they never envisioned the 425. If they can get a little bit more on that extra
Sure.
piece that's just sitting there, it's a little bit different, but it's going to be dictated
Yeah.
by what the traffic can handle back there, obviously. And any track's going to be the same thing, which is a little bit what Nate's saying, is your infrastructure is going to limit you depending on where you're located.
What I'm in favor of is they could put an entrance at the back of it into the rest area, only because it's the only Roy Rogers around. And right now I have to park in like employee parking and walk across. I'd like a separate entrance. That would be nice.
Well, we are having an emergency, actually. So
know
you
that.
can ask the fire chief if you have the rights to the knockbox, and then you'll be set.
So
Or
it's
just
50
put a
grand.
parking lot right next to the knock box.
There you go. And just say for Brian's use only. There you go.
It's just for Roy Rogers. It's just missing
You're
something.
right. You're right.
Brian? Yeah, for Brian, plural.
And then I could spell it all different ways, and then we'll cover two at least from your office. So
Exactly.
there you go.
Okay, moving on. Mr. Vital, manager updates.
Just a couple of things, and I'll be very brief as we're approaching the, just over the 8 o'clock hour. The first item I have, just to let the board know, our intern working on the climate action plan, she's ready to go in her next semester here. We've had discussions with her. She needs the township to execute a small agreement with them that says that she can do a climate action plan, and she can, if she has time, update the website, kind of some things, some deliverables. I am of the opinion that, unless David disagrees with me, that I can execute this minor document here and move it forward so that she can work on her climate action plan and bring that back and have a presentation to the board. So unless there's any problems, I'm going to just move that along. And
So there's no action on our part required?
no. So I'm just going to keep moving the project forward. Unless you guys don't want me to move the project forward, and then I'll stop it. Okay, the next part, just because the last time we planted trees, we had some upset neighbors in one of the neighborhoods. So we have a couple of tree plantings that are in Stan's report. You'll see this weekend, I believe, they are going to Mertztown Road behind the warehouses. And they're going to do 45 tree plantings out there. So that'll be one. And then within the next month, they're going to be in the area of Spring Creek Road and Red Oak, and they're going to do 15 small bare root trees. So we get some grants for those at times, and then we have the EAC facilitating the one at Mertztown. So, and I think Child Unlimited is in on that one too. So just an update to the public that you'll see those getting planted. Those are township projects. If you have any concerns, you can call the Public Works Department. Cable franchise agreement. We continue to work with our legal entity that helps us with the cable franchise. Renee had some work to do on equipment costs to look at the equipment of operating the educational and government channels. So we're still in process with that. That agreement, the first one does expire, I think, in March. However, it'll just extend, and there's no issue with that. So the other item we have, just a report you'll see before the board because it's on the agenda. Those volunteer firefighters that are eligible for the earned income tax credit. So we wanted to start the first round and have those ready to go. So you will see that component before you. Just a couple of things I would note as well. Just a reminder, we continue to work on community days. That's in process. The recreation department is trying to put the finishing touches on that. We're also working on the agreement with EMAC to operate the pool. We've had a meeting, an update meeting with them. We'll have the draft copy to the solicitor fairly soon. It is the same agreement we did last year. So we're moving that component forward. We've talked internally in Community and Economic Development Office. in order to retain talent and encourage the individuals we have in the department to continue to get training. We wanted to look internally at a kind of a merit-based system for certification. So if you would get a certification, you're a full-time employee, look to do $1,000 bump in your salary for obtaining that certification. And that could be anything like commercial building inspector, zoning and property maintenance inspector, those type of certifications. We would cap them, of course, with department head approval. So really, we have three people that would look for. Our sewage enforcement officer, our code inspector / code specialist, and then we also have two part-time individuals as well that we were looking to do a lesser amount, like of a one-time, like $250 bonus. If you get a certification, we kind of move forward with that. So that's some of the ideas we're having internally. Thought we'd share them with the board just to see if there was any feedback or we're on the right path. We think we are on that side. If we cap it at, 3 or 4 certifications a year, that gets people where we need them to go. They're not quite ready to bump to the next position. So like code specialist 2, for you to get to code specialist 3, you have to have several more certifications like on the commercial side. So this would get you, as you move through the process, to get then to that next step. So just one of the ideas we had would like to move forward with. So and then on some recruitment, we are currently seeking our land use specialist. That's been up for a while. We've had a couple applicants now. We're trying to at least see if we have anything and do some interviews and move forward with that. We're a little bit behind. I was hoping to have somebody in early in this quarter. It looks like early next quarter potentially if we have a good applicant pool. We also have the assistant recreation director position that's out right now. That was budgeted for. We just put that one out and we're starting to receive resumes and applications. Always looking for part-time attendance at the community center to help us after hours. And they've started their recruitment for summer camp counselors and snack bar staff down here for the pool. So the good news is it looks like out of the 35 camp counselors that we had last year, 21 have already said they're going to come back. So we continue to see that come home. So just wanted to give the board some updates on those various things. Oh, and we're working on a couple other policies. I've circulated them to staff. They include our purchasing policy, petty cash, couple other policies that we have moving forward in draft stage, but hopefully I have them for you in the workshop for March to just kind of give some feedback to. So I'll circulate those before, but then maybe we can have some discussion about where we are. So, and then also one of the other big items, the audit is going to start. We should have them in here March 13th. So they'll start through that paperwork. So unless there's any questions for me or you need clarification on anything else, that's my report.
Thank you, Bruce. Any questions for Mr. Beidle? Okay, department reports. Anything specific or that covered under what you just did?
Yeah, we included department reports for the board's review. Hold on, Renee has something. Hold on. Okay. I'm sorry. Let me, Renee needs me to get something out of Vince's report here for you. Yeah, just a couple of things on his to note. We have sent people to the Walmart storm retention basin where we were having some issues with feline problems. We did notice some garbage and lack of maintenance in those stormwater retention systems. But we're going to notify the property owner, and I'm sure that that's going to be part of that as those felines may become displaced as they go in there and do their work to maintain their stormwater. So the board may hear some comments and feedback from concerned residents and non-residents. So that's one of the other things. We're also, we continue to look at various truck parking complaints everywhere. We've heard them, Gaiman Road, Scenic View. So we're looking through that in case the board would hear anything. We're handling that internally, and if we have to make any adjustments or changes, we'll bring it back for further discussion. Did I get it all right? Is that what you need? All right. Renee says I got everything with us, so unless there's any questions.
Well, since you brought up detention ponds having trash in, I noticed that detention pond for the apartments at Lower McCunchy and Church Lane has a good bit of debris in it.
Uh,
And I assume it's after the township just cut the grass.
They're on it.
Yeah, it's
The
actually.
team is on it.
That's-
For the first thing that needed to get taken care of was to get the vegetation under control. The second, and our team is managing that right now, is reaching out to management about the need to clean it up.
Yeah, that is a private basin. We have been looking for several years to try to coordinate its maintenance and those responsibilities to it. We've had some good conversations recently, so that is one of the items of note. They actually have some sediment to take out of there, do some maintenance, and hopefully we'll get some compliance there.
Okay.
Okay, public comment on agenda topics. Seeing none, I'm not waiting on that one. Seeing none, this meeting is adjourned. I didn't move as fast as it.